But if we turn when justice calls, the chains we forge will bind us all. When truth is silence, when lies take hold, the cost is freedom, the soul grows cold. No one stands tall while another must fall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, defending every voice, defending every right. For the moment we falter, the moment we stall, we lose our own freedom when we let others fall. You can't stand free while others kneel. When justice fades, it's freedom they steal. An innocent condemned, a crime unspoken, and with it the bond of liberty is broken. No tyrant rules without our consent. Oppression thrives where silence is spent. Stand for the weak, the silence the small, or freedom will crumble for us all. We're mavericks of freedom, guardians of the light, fighting for the truth, for what is just and right. For the rights of one are the rights of all. We rise or we fall by answering the call. Even those we may oppose deserve the rights we all uphold. For if we deny them what is fair, we build our own prison in despair. The fight's not easy, it never will be, but justice for one is the key to be free. We stand as mavericks, together we strive, defending the rights that keep freedom alive. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, upholding every truth, protecting every right. When one is oppressed, we're all in the thrall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. So take a stand, let your courage rise. Defend the truth, don't compromise. For the soul of the world, the writing's on the wall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for
Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. 50 years ago today, that's half a century, by the way, for those of you counting, the Vietnam War ended. Now, there was an event in history that left scars on a nation, and I'm not just talking about Vietnam. The United States, Canada, really scars on the world, the free world especially. Scars we still live with today, scars that haunt us. Pierre Poilievre is fighting for his political life. The Conservatives are frustrated in Canada, where we have elected a fourth consecutive Liberal government. The politics is thick. The deals are being made. Coalitions, partnerships. Will Elizabeth May become part of the Liberal cabinet? Green Party, member of Parliament, leader of the Green Party? It's not just the NDP that might prop up the Liberals. It might just be Elizabeth May. Seems the small parties have more power and more influence on Canadian politics than a lot of people realize. It's odd, ironic, that people are always criticizing, saying that it's a two-party system, that the little parties don't have a voice, that there's no way to have an influence in Canadian politics. And yet, here we sit again with the little guys holding a disproportionate level of influence in the political system. And now people are complaining about that. Boy, Canadians are just never happy. What a bunch of... Well, you can fill in the blank, as many are tonight, because a lot of people are saying, stop whining so much. Quit complaining about Donald Trump. He's the best thing that ever happened to Canada. And we are seeing actually positive comments come out of the White House from Trump about Prime Minister Carney. And, you know, it wouldn't matter which way it went. If at this point Trump was criticizing Carney, the Conservatives would be all over it, saying, see, he's going to be ineffective, can't work with the guy, should have elected Poilievre, he'd get along much better with him. But now because Carney is getting positive comments from Trump, we're getting all the influencers saying, see, he lied to you. He's in Trump's back pocket. He's going to hand the whole country to him. He's Trump's best friend. You got duped. It doesn't matter which way it's going or which way it may have gone, or it doesn't matter what we have. They're going to find a way to spin it on both sides to just suit their political narrative. It's entertaining, and we have lots of entertaining politics to share with you tonight. So get out your popcorn. You're gonna need it. We'll be right back on the other side.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so first up, of course, I guess we should just talk a little bit right off the top about the Canadian election and the not just the results, but the results of the results. The results of the results being that we're talking about where Canada is at tonight. And it's not really the best place for a nation state to be in because the whole country is fractured. And yet, in some ways, you know, maybe more unified than ever, because you've seen this resilience, this patriotism that I don't think we've ever really quite seen anything like it in Canada on the one side. And yet there is a side, I don't know if it's an equal side, but there's a side that wants to just rip the country apart. And that's really rooted in two places, Quebec and Alberta, especially Alberta right now, where we've seen, you know, immediately after the election, the premier, Danielle Smith, announcing these revisions to rules that govern the way citizens can bring forward motions for things like referendums, which would be needed and would pave the way possibly to Alberta independence. Now, if I remember right, and this is off the top of my head, so under the old rules, for a citizen-led initiative to bring forward a referendum, you needed something like 670,000 or 700,000 signatures on a petition to make that happen. That number has now been, that threshold, much lower, now at about 170,000. And the period of time in which those signatures must be collected has also been extended, making it much easier, much more likely that this is going to move forward in some fashion. Danielle Smith saying that she, as the Premier of Alberta, will not be the person who brings that referendum forward, but she just paved the way for someone to do it. And man, it is, it's heavy duty out there now. A lot of emotion, a lot of people calling for Alberta to separate or explore some other options. What are those options? I don't know. That has sort of been the stumbling block, you know, in a lot of ways. Very frustrated people, some people with maybe other interests, spinning up a narrative to get people upset out there, but not really being clear what would be offered on the other side. Talking a lot about the problems, talking a lot about the negatives. And as I've been watching some of what some of these people have been saying, I'm telling you, they're not really being completely honest. Just watched a video with that lawyer, Jeffrey Rath. My assessment on what he was saying, this was from a couple of weeks ago, actually. So it's an older video, but he was someplace speaking to some people. I'm not sure exactly where the location was, but he was talking about if we separate, you'll instantly become like 30% more wealthy because you won't have to pay federal income tax. All your federal taxes will be gone. You won't have to pay anything to the federal government anymore. And clearly that's just not being entirely truthful, because if the federal government is out of the picture, then the province is responsible for all the services that would be cut from the federal government, the Canadian government. You know, those your taxes, when you pay those taxes to the federal government, they go to Ottawa. And if you live in, doesn't matter what province you live in, if I live here in Ontario, they go to Ottawa. And then my tax dollars to Ottawa, they come back in the form of services and programs, whether it's paving the Trans-Canada Highway or the Canada Pension Plan or healthcare. It's provincial jurisdiction, but the federal government pumps money into all provinces for healthcare through transfer payments, and then those funds are used along with provincial money, which is raised through taxation, to fund healthcare. And it trickles down even to municipalities, a lot of these federal programs, and they're used to build bridges and infrastructure, and they can go into community centers, or in the case of the housing plans that we saw from both Poilievre, the Conservative leader, and Mark Carney, the Liberal leader, now elected Prime Minister. Federal money goes into those programs, and if Mark Carney follows through with his housing plan, there will be I believe it's a $10 billion fund of federal money that will be made available to people in all provinces and territories, I guess, for mortgages, low interest rate or low cost mortgages that might not otherwise be available through banks. So these are funds that come back. But if you are not part of Canada anymore, you might not have to pay that federal income tax. And so, but that doesn't mean you get to keep all that money, because the province will have to make up the shortfall on those programs. If you want any of those programs, do you want your health care? Well, you might think that's a provincial program, but it's actually a joint program, because you're getting some of that money back from the federal government into your healthcare system. both provincial, federal money. And so it's just not being entirely truthful. Defense, national defense. Who funds, federal policing? Who takes care of the border? Well, you're going to be completely responsible to secure that border. You're going to have to pay border guards. You'll have to pay for, you buy a few F-22 fifth generation fighters from the United States military industrial complex to protect your own sovereignty. And you're going to, I think you're going to see your taxes on the provincial side go up, but it won't be provincial. You're just going to have a federal, I guess, Alberta government, unless you join the United States. And then you're being told, well, that's going to be, then we'll take care of you. We're going to the military will, U.S. military will take care of you. Yeah, they're going to increase your taxes because you have to pay your fair share. You think 3% NATO, 2% NATO funding commitments from NATO countries like Canada, not that, which is a goal, not an obligation, although it is sort of, an unwritten obligation. You think that you're going to be paying a little bit more than 2% more on your taxes. Just saying. There's rhetoric and a sales job, and then there's actual truth. And, it's that 51st state stuff that's front and center. It's frustration in Alberta, which I get, but a lot of that is because you think you're not being subjected to propaganda. Oh my. Why do you think people are so upset? It's the last chance. It's the end of the line. Well, it's just propaganda. But you go ahead. You'll find out. But if you find out, it'll be too late because there's no coming back. Because if you change your mind after, do you think the U.S. is going to say, that's okay, you can leave. You can go back to Canada? I don't think so. But if you choose to leave Canada, what do you think the federal government is going to do? I mean, I'm not sure, right? Depends how it goes down. But my guess is we won't be taking up arms to keep you here. Other way around, you become part of the U.S., then you decide to leave. I don't know if they'll be quite so tolerant. I wonder what would happen if, say, Michigan decided to join Canada and the Canadian government started making overtures to Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Hey, would you like to join Canada? You'd be much better off. We'll make your taxes. You'll get free health care. All you have to do is secede from the union. How would Donald Trump react? And I mean, if it really got to a point, right, where it was serious business and they were talking about a referendum and you had all these people jacked up and running around and you had these guys going up to Ottawa to meet with Mark Carney. And Mark Carney was meeting with all the, I don't know, some, you get my drift? Okay, well, anyway, just saying. Cracks on the conservative side of the political ledger following the election. Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, they made gains in overall support in popular vote, and that's partly because we saw so much polarization and so many voters that had previously voted for, the smaller parties left those smaller parties, and all those votes pretty much went into either the Liberal or the Conservative side. And so as a result, you saw the Conservatives make big gains, but not enough to win the election. And that was partly because of the distribution of seats, the way that's laid out across the country. It's also just because of like I said, the polarization, the way things went down. So now, after 4 consecutive losses, you have friction, let's say, within the party. Poilievre came out on election night and said, indicated that he's probably going to stay on as leader, even though he lost his own seat, which surprised a lot of people, me included. I thought he'd he would hold on to it. They were saying, though, that he was in trouble. The polls were saying that. That's why you saw him fly back to Carleton, his riding in the Ottawa area on the last day of the campaign. And he ended his campaign with a big rally, a big speech, very well attended on the final night before the people went to the polls. But it wasn't enough. And he actually finished, thousands of votes behind. And there was a lot of, pretty heavy, and some would say maybe even dirty politics in play there, because they ran how many candidates, 90 candidates or something in the riding. Obviously, there was stuff going on there to try to create enough chaos that it was disruptive. And as a result, you saw Poilievre unseated from his own riding. Nevertheless, I guess all that stuff was legal, and it cost him big time, and maybe really big time, because even though he's saying he wants to stay on, you can see the cracks in the Conservative foundation now pretty clearly. I said even on election night, it's not clear. There might be somebody who will come forward to challenge him. There's nobody obvious that is really going to take a run at it. One of the people whose names is being floated out there is Doug Ford, Ontario Premier. But there's bad blood between the Ontario Provincial Progressive Conservatives and the Federal Conservative Party of Canada. And that's because of the camps. There's, Poilievre, as I've laid out for you, is part of the old Harper, Alberta-centric, more really conservative arm of the party. The Peter MacKays, those guys, not the Aaron O'Toole's. And as I pointed out the other night in that long but detailed investigative report that we had on here the other night, with an included Bridget Belton, that Freedom Convoy in part was used, exploited even, by certain conservatives to, at the time, if you remember, to unseat then Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole. And that paved the way for Pierre Poilievre to become leader of the Conservative Party. So you see, there's politics, and then there's internal politics, and then there's internal party politics, and you're getting a lot of internal party politics being exposed now, and a lot of it is pretty raw. It's not pretty, but it is entertaining. So if you have some popcorn, I'll play this clip from a news conference today where Ontario Premier Doug Ford was talking about proposed changes to strengthen Ontario's bail system, all of it, of course, relating to the justice system in general. He also called today for elected judges in the system. So a lot of very conservative ideas being floated by Doug Ford on that front tonight. But that wasn't what really made the headlines today. The headlines that came out of this news conference today with Doug Ford, Ontario progressive conservative leader in Ontario, the headlines came with his comments about the bad blood between, conservatives in Canada. And especially the Ontario Conservatives and the federal Conservatives. We saw, and just to tee this up just a little bit more, you have to remember that new, pretty fresh Conservative member of Parliament, Jamil Jivani, came out like a pit bull right after the election and started attacking Doug Ford, accusing him really of sabotaging the Pierre Poilievre campaign. And I don't think that was just him talking about these things on his own. That was, I think, premeditated, choreographed, approved attack on Doug Ford, because Doug Ford he didn't really come out and support Pierre Poilievre during the federal election. But, on the other side, it didn't come back the other way during the provincial election either. It didn't come from the Poilievre camp into Ontario to support Doug Ford, which, he just had his election just a short time ago, right? Because he said he needed a clear mandate to deal with the tariff threat from Donald Trump. And he went to the polls and he won another majority government in Ontario. But I submit to you that he ran a smarter campaign. He's a smarter politician because he's not so ideologically entrenched. And in Canada, to win an election, you need to know how to frame your narrative, how to reach across the aisle, how to woo voters from other political camps. And maybe most important is if you're not going to directly, appeal to them by offering programs that are more aligned with them, you have to at least be careful about what you say and not talk too much about the policies or ideas or even the ideology that might alienate your political people in the other political camp, especially if you're a conservative. There's just not enough conservatives out there to form governments. You have to pull support from some of those other parties. And Poilievre didn't do that. Not enough. He's being accused of doing that, but he really didn't. And the streamers, the live streamers, the podcasters, they didn't help him as much as they think they did because of exactly that. They alienated and scared a lot of liberals. So you're not going to get any of those guys to vote for you, but you need some of those guys in order to win. Doug Ford knows that. That's why he's like, I don't give two hoots, he said yesterday, about political stripes. Anyway, here he is being asked about this whole bad blood thing with Pierre Poilievre and the federal Conservatives.
Hi, Premier. Laura Stone, Globe and Mail.
Hi, Laura.
I think you may have made some news today. I want to ask about federal issues. You're here making a tough on crime announcement. Yeah. I didn't hear much of that from the Liberal platform, but there was a lot of that in the federal Conservative platform. Why didn't you come out with Pierre Poilievre and make these kinds of statements during the campaign?
I shouldn't interfere in the federal election. Last time I checked, Pierre Poilievre never came out in our election. Matter of fact, him or one of his lieutenants told every one of his members, don't you dare go out and help the PCs. Isn't that ironic? But anyways, I'm not going to dig deep into this. The people spoke, and I have no say in who people vote for. But I'll tell you one thing. We have a government, democratically elected. I will hold them accountable. I'll hold them accountable like I would, no matter if it's a conservative government or a liberal government. My interest is protecting the people of Ontario, and I will be all over this government. They know I will be, as I was before, about being tough on crime.
Premier, you've said before you're born with a C stamped on your forehead. You talked about having a blue sign on your lawn.
Yep.
Why is there so much bad blood between you and the federal party? And how does the federal party start to build bridges now within the Conservative movement as they look to the next 3, 4 years?
Well, all they have to do is make a phone call. I like a lot of the MPs, but the people spoke, and they spoke loud and clear. They spoke loud and clear in our election, and they spoke loud and clear on the federal election. And so that's democracy. They elect who they want.
That concludes our announcement. Thank you very much.
So that was the last question, but that was the answer from the last question at that news conference that really ended up making the headlines today. But it isn't just Doug Ford. This is a thing that is really making waves across the country. It's a blue wave, but not a blue wave of votes. It's a blue wave of self-doubt. And as the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, commented today, maybe, and I'm taking a liberty with what he said here a little bit, a blue wave of maybe soul searching is in order for Conservatives as they try to find a path forward to, at some point, maybe actually regaining power in the country, like real power, meaning forming a government. So here's Houston today reflecting on the results of the federal election.
What do you make of the results for the Conservatives in Nova Scotia, especially they only picked up one seat?
Yeah, obviously, I know a lot of the candidates personally. I know, like, campaigns are hard. You put a lot into them. There's lots of highs and lows. So I certainly I feel for them, the ones that were unsuccessful. I don't read too much into it. I didn't really get that involved in the federal election, but. I think what we've learned. There's always lessons to be learned, and I think there'll be some lessons learned from this campaign. I think the Conservative Party of Canada was very good at pushing people away, not so good at pulling people in, and I think that they probably saw that in some of the results they had across the country.
Sandra Moss said yesterday that the federal Conservatives in Nova Scotia could have used your help in this election, and that generally Nova Scotia PCs and federal Conservatives should work more closely together. What do you make of those comments?
I'm a collaborative person. I work with people that I can work with all the time. I don't differentiate between political parties. I work with Nova Scotians every single day. The federal election, I stayed clear of. I wrote to both the letters to both the leaders on issues that matter to Nova Scotians. But I think just on the Conservative movement in general, I think the Conservative Party of Canada, I hope they do some soul searching on what they believe it means to be a Conservative. There are many shades of blue, and I think that people will see that the way I govern, and they'll see that in our caucus and our party members, that we work with Nova Scotians. We'll work with anyone.
They would like to be better served by doing that, by electing a new leader, do you think?
Oh, that'll be for them to decide. That'll be the Conservative Party of Canada. Their membership will decide that. Their caucus will. That's for them to decide. I'm just excited to work with the new government and anyone who wants to help advance the interests of Nova Scotia.
Have you spoken to Prime Minister Carney since the results?
I've reached out to him personally. Yeah.
Neither he nor Mr. Poilievre that we heard responded to your 6 priorities. Are you disappointed by them?
I definitely had a discussion with Prime Minister Carney on the contents of the letter during the campaign. But look, the idea was just to remind people what's important to Nova Scotians, and that now we have elections behind us, and we'll move forward. And I'm looking forward to working with the new government on advancing the interests of Nova Scotians and Canadians.
Did the Prime Minister commit to any of that?
He didn't commit to all of it, for sure. It was a discussion about. I think it was a discussion about what's important and why. But for me, as I said, a number of the things that they've indicated that as a new government they'll focus on is right exactly in our wheelhouse too. So
during your
campaign, Premier, during your campaign, you were talking about taking on the Trudeau government. There was a bit of Nova Scotia wasn't getting a fair shake. Now that Trudeau is out of the picture, can you work with Carney?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I'm optimistic about what's possible because of the things that they're talking about. As I mentioned, the energy corridor is really important. Focusing on energy generation, the potential for the country. Nova Scotia is in that mix, so I'm really excited about that. I think we can get a lot done.
I'm sure you saw that Doug Ford suggested a few days ago that you were interested in the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada.
I don't think he suggested that.
How would you interpret what he said?
What are you referring to when you talked about the video?
About your video. He was asked about your video, and he said, "I think he's
or something." Did he?
Something like that. And he said, "I think he has leadership aspirations." You saw that. I'm sure you've seen that.
No, I didn't see him say it that way. I mean, people may interpret certain things, but I think he said. Didn't he say he was razzing me or something, or was giving him the gears or something like that?
Yeah. You said it was just a joke.
Yeah, I think it's just the video is incredible. Over 2 million views right now, and it has evoked a lot of emotions in Nova Scotians, and certainly people that have a connection to Nova Scotia in some way, shape, or form, came to school here, have relatives here. Like it's had a really positive impact, and and that's what was the intent. So this is a great province.
So are you interested in the federal leadership?
No, I'm focused on Nova Scotia. Moving forward this province. There's a lot we can do in this province. That's my focus.
So no, you said no in front of that. You mean no? No means no?
To what?
The federal leadership.
To the federal leadership.
Oh, I'm focused on Nova Scotians, you guys. That's pretty clear.
So can you clarify then what your intent was in releasing that video?
To promote Nova Scotia, to evoke the emotions in Nova Scotians, the pride in Nova Scotia, the pride in country. This is the time for all of us to be proud of where we come from. And we have a lot to be proud about in Nova Scotia. People sometimes you forget. Your day-to-day life, lots of stresses and things. And I think it was just a moment for people who could sit back and for 2.5 minutes just say, yeah, I know that. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, it's a good thing.
Part of what people were reading into your release of that video was that it came out when Pierre Poilievre was visiting Nova Scotia for his one campaign stop here. Should anything be made of the timing of your release?
I think it was just a pure coincidence.
Are you learning French between you and Poilievre? Were you unable to work with him in a certain capacity?
I don't think Riff would be I didn't have a relationship with him. I don't have a relationship with him. Obviously, during our campaign, there was a situation. I think the Globe story was pretty accurate. Is something that happened there that kind of probably had ramifications on both sides. But look, I think I've always been clear. Like I got the best job in the world. There's a great province, tons of potential. I love it.
On the flip side, then, can you work with Carney? What are some characteristics or things you like about him as a leader?
Yeah, I can work with him for sure. Because I'm committed to free trade in Canada, committed to getting rid of the interprovincial trade barriers. So is the Prime Minister. So, committed to developing our natural resources and, producing energy here and changing our economy for the better. And I believe the Prime Minister is committed to that as well. He uses the term nation-building projects, and we have those too.
Have you taken any French lessons? You'd be surprised how many people have brought that up with you.
Un peu.
And I'm just wondering if we could go back to the comments you made about the Conservative Party of Canada and soul searching. You've always branded yourself as more of a red Tory. Is that what you would like to see them, the direction you'd like to see them move into?
Look, I think there are many shades of blue. And it can be a big tent, and it can be an effective big tent. And I think that after 4 consecutive losses to the Liberal Party, I think it's time for them to do some soul searching, and I hope they do.
Do you think there are lessons they could have taken from your election win in the fall, maybe that they didn't take?
I think our election campaign was pretty successful. I do think Doug Ford's re-election campaign was pretty successful too. So, for me personally, I always say for issues we face as a province or whatever the case may be, we don't have to create the wheel. We can learn from others. We can work with others. I think there was opportunities for them to reach out and learn and work with others. They decided not to. That's their choice.
Premier, I want to ask you about offshore wind in light of the fact that U.S. President Donald Trump has slowed things down on the U.S. seaboard again and even canceled one project that was already underway. Are you worried about the implications for Nova Scotia businesses that have been getting involved in staging parts that have been going to the U.S. for offshore wind?
I think what's happening in the United States is an incredible opportunity for Nova Scotia. It's a good thing. Because we have a remarkable wind resource here in offshore Nova Scotia. We'll prepare bids for about 5 gigawatts through the wind resource areas that are being discussed. The potential could be as high as 60 gigawatts. 60 gigawatts of offshore wind could power 40%, could meet 40% of Canada's needs. This is a very, very significant resource. So I think with what's happening in the United States, developing a resource on the eastern seaboard in Nova Scotia, continuing to develop and reignite the supply chain, it's all good for what would potentially happen down there behind us.
further along in the U.S. than we are here. I mean, it's still years out before you'd actually be putting turbines in Nova Scotia waters. So what could be done in the meantime for companies that have been tapping into the supply chain for this more advanced industry in the U.S.?
Yeah, so these are all discussions. Once we, this is it's kind of the story of Nova Scotia. We have natural resources that we've looked away from. We've ignored. You could say that across critical minerals. You could say that across gas. You could say that in a number of aspects. And wind is the same. But now is the time to get moving. They're not overnight projects. They will take time, but they're never going to get done if you don't start. And we're starting.
We do have some reporters on Zoom, so I want to.
So we've got her nailed down there. Do you want to see that video that he was talking about? That viral video he produced? I do. Let's take a look. So here's the Tim Houston video, Premier of Nova Scotia. This thing has been going viral, they say. I don't know how viral it is or how organic it is. Maybe it's organic. Maybe it has money pushing it out there. I suspect there's a few dollars promoting it. But let's see what all the hullabaloo is about, shall we?
Hey, I've sailed on the Blue Nose, and do know that you go to Peggy's Cove for the gingerbread, not just a few. I have asked who your father is, and I give directions based on landmarks that are no longer there. I've never worn a sou'wester, but do know to tie up before a nor'easter. I've tapped my foot at the red shoe and know that Celtic colors are heard, not seen. We're the province that invented the modern ice skate, which makes sense because we also invented hockey. We're the home of Blair, Nate, and Brad, and of Sydney's beat-up Dryer. We came into our own with wooden ships and iron men, but now it's our Olympian women that bring home the gold. We call it the Old Bridge, even though the new bridge is older than me. We didn't need Sunny D, we had Beep, and road trips hit different when you stopped at Ma Webb's or the Chicken Burger. We know the colder the water, the sweeter the meat. And though it's fresh at Sobeys, it's even fresher off the wharf. Nova Scotians invented the telephone, the odometer, newsprint, and kerosene. We gave the world the propeller, wheelchair-accessible buses, and, of course, the Donair. We're the home of responsible government, of Joseph Howe's papers, and a whole mess of very proud capers. We've the Oxford blueberry, the Valley's wine, and Farmer John as a staple at every holiday dinner. Here you'll find Maud Lewis's cat, Alex Colville's horse, and the glamour of our own Hollywood East. We flock to Lawrencetown surf and the Wanderers turf. Oh, and by the way, it's pronounced Scala, not Scala. Port Royal is Canada's first permanent European settlement, but it was founded in a world that Glooscap created. Le Grand Dérangement was our greatest tragedy, but at least we know where Cajuns are from. We're the home of Canada's Navy, the security form, and NATO's R&D. We're the birthplace of the Rock's father, Theodore Tugboat, and of George Dixon's right hand. We were the first in the country to legalize that love is love, and ours is the province where Viola Desmond sat wherever she damn well pleased. Because of trade, we were the richest province of Confederation in 1867, and now the rest of Canada is again following our interprovincial lead. Inspired by the Black Loyalists and the Trelawney Maroons, we will not be bullied by those that look to oppress us. We were the first province in Canada, the first port of call for generations of new Canadians, and we will never be the 51st of anything. My name is Tim, and I am Nova Scotian.
There you have it. Seems pretty Canadian to me. But the cracks are showing in the conservative relationships. Let me find that. I just had it set up here. Here we go. Here's that Jamil Javani. Well, one of the clips of this. He's just recently elected as a conservative MP. He was elected in a by-election. Just, oh man, how many months ago? Not that long ago. in the last session, and now reelected, and had this to say on election night. And this is really where the cracks really began to show. And you can see the numbers on the bottom of the screen, and that is why.
Tonight, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have a great team here in Bowmanville, Oshawa North. Very excited and happy to bring home a victory.
I do want to ask you, Mr. Giovanni, because you've just spoken to your supporters, a large group that's here at the pub here in Bowmanville, North Oshawa, and you said to them, among other things, that Doug Ford was a problem for you in this campaign. You said that he sabotaged the Conservative campaign. That's your words. You said he was a hype man for the Liberals. Take me through how you see that.
Yeah, well, look, Doug Ford just went through an election. I have differences of opinion with him. I don't like how he's managed healthcare or education. But out of respect, we didn't say anything. Federal party, we didn't get in his way. When it was our turn to run an election, he couldn't stay out of our business. Always getting his criticisms and all his opinions out, distracting our campaign, trying to make it about him, trying to position himself as some kind of political genius that we needed to be taking cues from.
Was it him specifically? Was it his campaign manager, Corey, tonight? Do you see Doug Ford as a problem for the federal party in the outcome of this race?
I see Doug Ford as a problem for Ontario and for Canada. I think he's not doing a great job in running this province, and now he's trying to exercise his influence over other levels of government, and it's not like this guy is doing anything particularly well. I mean,
you did used to work for him.
I did. I'm speaking from experience. I tried to fix problems in this province, and he kept getting in his way and all his goons around him all the time. They wouldn't make anything better, and now we're seeing him because this guy's a political genius because he beat Bonnie Crombie and Stephen Del Duca, and now we got to sit around getting advice from him? No. He has taken the provincial Conservative Party and turned it into something hollow, unprincipled, something that doesn't solve problems. He's glad-handing with Chrystia Freeland, having coffees and lattes with Mark Carney, and I'm sitting here saying we need to be fighting for change and something new and something different, not being a hype man to the Liberal Party.
Some would argue that the challenge within the federal Conservative movement is that there are these divisions, divisions that in some ways you're outlining tonight, and that it is the thing that stops or prevents, holds back the federal party from the majority government that it seeks. Do you see that as a possible outcome to some of the fractions and frictions that exist within the federal party?
There is a lot of unity from Conservatives across the board. Peter MacKay and Stephen Harper and Jason Kenney, James Moore, all sorts of people who've been part of our movement for a long time, united behind Pierre. They're opportunists,
the ones who
like
brought
Doug
him to
Ford.
power.
And I think it's not about ideology or differences of beliefs. It is about some people believing our purpose as Conservatives is to be an alternative to what the Liberals offer. And then there are people like Doug Ford who are opportunists. And I reject that outright.
Do you have any leadership ambitions?
Look, we have a leader of our party right now. We're still waiting in for the final seat counts. I don't know what tomorrow holds. My focus, though, is on all the young people, all the parents, the moms, the dads who came to us and trusted us to offer an alternative, a brighter future. We're going to see that through. We're going to keep fighting, and when the next federal election comes around, Conservatives will earn the trust of more voters, and we will bring home a victory nationally.
My last question to you looks at the results. As we speak here right now, 160 for the Liberals, 151 for your Conservatives. This is a lot closer of a race than some had expected. Why do you think that is?
Well, look, I think a lot of people misunderstood just the frustration that Canadians felt. All these polls that showed Conservatives far below the Liberals, I think we're missing how many young people saw our party as the party of dreamers and hustlers and strivers and builders. That is our identity for young people, and we are going to continue offering them that vision for Canada. As we continue to see progress made, earning more trust, growing our party, getting more union support, police support, young families, working class families, I think we will see this identity that Pierre Poilievre has helped develop crystallize further, and our party will only go up from here.
Jamil Giovanni, thank you very much.
Yeah, he asked me if he has aspirations for the leadership. He's not in the mix. No, he's been pushed out there. Didn't do that on his own and did not say those things without approval. That's coming from a particular part of the party and their political reasons, which we're not privy to, but you can read between the lines and you can see that there's a struggle ongoing now. Pierre Poilievre, without losing his seat, That's a big problem when you lose your seat in an election and you're the leader. But that arm of the party, they obviously really want to keep Poilievre. So they're fighting to do that. But the progressive wing, they're pushing back. You can see it. There's a struggle, an internal party struggle now. And we'll see how it ultimately plays out. But Jamil Jivani, not in the mix. Mr. Houston, Premier of Alberta, maybe. Doug Ford, no, I don't think he'll run. That's why I think that's really why you're seeing those comments from Jamil Jivani, and they've been attacking Doug Ford for a while now. There's just too much bad blood there. So no, he won't. He's not going to be. He's not going to be the guy. We'll see if Poilievre can hang on. They say they have to find a seat for him. Who will they get to give up a seat to pave the way for a by-election where Poilievre can be parachuted in? We will see. It'll happen soon, quickly. You will see. We will all see. Things will become clearer in time. And he doesn't like Doug Ford having lattes with Mark Carney. And he's glad-handing with Christian Freeland. Dude. Yeah, I know. That's politics. That's political rhetoric. The reality is everybody's going to have to work with Mark Carney now. All the premiers, because he's the prime minister. So probably a good idea to try to at least get along with the guy if you want those transfer payments. If if you want to make things happen, if you really want to work in the best interests of the people, yeah, you have to at least try to get along, especially if you're both conservatives. But the conservatives have this long history in Canada of, self-destruction, breaking the party up and then reconstituting it in usually a unite the right movement. That's why you saw the Reform Party out in Western Canada form after, everything kind of splitting up. And then, over time, the party comes back together. The Conservative Party blew apart. Then you had the Canadian Alliance, over time. Then it comes back together. It all galvanizes again for a while. And then they blow it all up. And we saw it during this federal election. It was Poilievre's to lose. They had like a 30-point spread, man, a 30-point lead. And then I don't care what Donald Trump said or what Donald Trump did. The Conservatives lost the lead because they did not really run an effective campaign. They did, but they didn't. They needed to change their messaging a bit. They needed to pivot because of the Trump factor, and they just didn't do it effectively. It took them too long. They sat on their hands. They tried to just hold the line, if you will, or just continue with their axe the tax narrative, that campaign slogan. And then they went through a series of slogans after they just tried to hold on to that for a while. And nothing really started to get them traction until really near the end of the campaign. And then they started to get more momentum, both because the messaging became more effective and also because it was at that time finally when people started to pay more attention. But they needed to backstop what they had done previously with that huge lead, and they needed to protect it. But there they were in the hockey game, and the Liberals were catching up, scoring goals all the way along, catching up to them, and it was unbelievable. We've never seen a swing in the polls, I don't think, to that degree in this country. So that was unprecedented. And then the polls that we were seeing, I was saying the polling is not really reliable because of the huge swings, but in the end, the polling ended up being pretty darn reliable. So we got what we got. Now people are upset or very happy, depending on which camp you're in. And the Conservatives are fighting, which is not good for the Conservatives. That's the way she goes down, man. And now Mark Carney, like I said at the beginning of the program, now Carney today, Donald Trump called him a very fine gentleman. Yeah, it says that a great relationship is possible between the United States and Canada with Mark Carney as Prime Minister. People are like, oh my, the way that's all being viewed, interpreted, especially on the conservative side, it's entertaining. Let's take a look. Okay, Trump says great relationship with Canada possible under Carney. This is from the Global News website, and here's the clip.
They both hated Trump, and it was the one that hated Trump, I think, the least that won. I actually think the conservative hated me much more than the so-called liberal. He's a pretty liberal guy. But no, I spoke to him yesterday. Couldn't have been nicer, and I congratulated him. It was a very mixed signal because it's almost even, which makes it very complicated for the country. It's a pretty tight race. But he's a very nice gentleman, and he's going to come to the White House very shortly, within the next week or less.
So, as a Canadian, I'm encouraged by that. I'd rather see the Prime Minister and the President getting along. I'd rather see stabilized trade, stability for employment for Americans and Canadians, a good, healthy relationship. It was not good for Canada or the United States, but especially Canada with Trudeau in there, because Trump and Trudeau hated each other. Trump really hated Trudeau. Trudeau, I think, was willing and able to work with Trump, but maybe not so much Trump with Trudeau. It very, just acid flowing between those two guys. So really corrosive. So better to have Carney or Poilievre, anybody dealing with Trump, I guess. And now the conservatives are upset because Carney's getting along with Trump. So you can spin it any way you want. But we'll see. And now we're looking, I guess, at a meeting between Carney and Trump maybe within the next week or so. And he literally said, I guess, he said, let's make a deal. He said, quote, I think, this is Trump, I believe, saying this. He said, I think we're going to have a great relationship. He called me up yesterday and said, let's make a deal. Yeah, that's what he said. Let's make a deal. It's let's make a deal with Monty Hall. No, in this case, in this new reality, it really is a reality show, isn't it, that we're watching? It's Let's Make a Deal with Donald Trump and Mark Carney. Do you remember the show, Let's Make a Deal? I guess, is it still on the air? I'm so old. I'll come right back and we'll continue on the other side of this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time tonight running clips of other streamers, influencers, news people, whatever you want to call them out there, talking about the 51st state stuff and all the rhetoric and, how they're viewing the Trump-Carney relationship. But I am going to run this one. It's because it's from the U.S. side. And this one really struck me as a little bit odd. Odd because I didn't really expect a comment to come from Patrick Bet-David on this subject, but maybe I should have, because he's certainly on the conservative side, and he has, done programs kind of looking at where Canada is and the 51st state stuff. And then he released a video that I found it got my attention because I don't think his perspective on it is really quite accurate, mostly because he's not Canadian. And I think also because he's basing his views on what he's been fed through the information ecosystem and from the people coming to speak to him. So he's in a little bit of his own echo chamber, I would say. Some accurate things here, but also kind of a slightly distorted perspective. And I think also I get the feeling that it's like a message that he's trying to send up here to Canadians, because this is a message from Patrick Bet-David to Canadians. And it's a pro-Trump message that I think is, how can I put this? I think it is, it's part of choreography, political choreography. It's not just him deciding, I'm going to make a video. I think there's more to it. I can't exactly tell you why, okay. There's just more behind the decision of him doing this, because I feel like this, how can I put it? It's more of a part of a campaign. It's part of the whole Canada 51st state, Trump, I'm not joking, I really do want to take over the country narrative, the push, and he's helping it along here. This is what he's doing. He's just adding a little bit of momentum to the Trump snowball rolling down the hill that threatens to just roll over Canada and catch it on the way by and have Canada stick to that big American snowball as it rolls down the hill. Listen to this and you'll kind of hear what I say. And I don't really agree with what he's saying here at all.
Canadian conservatives, I got some unsolicited advice for you. The type you're not going to like, but I'm going to give it to you anyways. You know what you sound like every time you say it's Trump's fault why Pierre lost? Do you know what you sound like every time you say it's Trump's fault why Pierre Poilievre lost? And not only did he lose the prime minister, but he lost his seat that he's held since 2004. That is embarrassing. Each time you say that, you sound like the 51st state of the United States of America. You validate Trump's points, why you need him. You validate why you see him as your head of state. So you're blaming the president for your governor losing in Canada. It is embarrassing, because if you did not even view it that way, you would never even bring up the point. You would never say it's Trump's fault. You wouldn't, because you're your own country. Who the hell that loses an election in a country where the opposing political parties' policies were so exposed the last 4 years during COVID that every country around the world knew how shitty things were in Canada, and you still didn't know how to make it win. You still didn't know how to win. And you lose your parliament, and you guys all acted like he was going to win and it was going to be a landslide victory. But no, it's Trump's fault. Of course, it's Trump's fault. No, it's Trump's fault, because we view ourselves as the 51st state. Please don't think I'm talking about every conservative in Canada.
He's talking
I'm
about
specifically
Pierre Poilievre.
talking to the fanboy of Pierre Poilievre conservatives that were so convinced that this whole thing was going to be done, and all these other critics. You guys are such terrible critics and unfair. He's such a great man. I don't care how great of a man and a husband he is. The market doesn't give handouts of prime minister to great men and women. They give it to winners. You either win or you don't. They don't give it to victims, crybabies. It's not fair. It's Trump's fault. That is so unattractive. But you lost in a big way. And you handed it over to the guy that came up with the economic policies of Justin Trudeau. I don't know, again, I keep saying this, if I've seen anything more embarrassing than this. But stop blaming Trump for your loss. You sound like the 51st state every time you say that. That's all I think about when I hear everybody blame Trump for Canada losing. You are the 51st state. Or else act like you have your own country and stop whining about another country's head of state.
What I think the real message is there, hey, Pierre, loser, and all you Pierre fanboys. I'm a Trump supporter. We are MAGA. We did everything we needed to do to help influence the election up in Canada. We handed the election to you. We conducted this whole campaign to influence Canadian politics, blamed it all on China when anything was ever exposed, as we always do, helped you in unprecedented ways, gave you a 30-point lead in the polls, and Pierre, you blew it. Now we're pissed. We're very disappointed in you. We're very upset because we handed you the election, gave you everything. And just because Donald Trump started talking about the 51st state, Canada's a 51st state, and he means it, you blew it. You could have won the election. You should have won the election, but you gave it all away because you couldn't handle what was going on with Donald Trump talking about what we really want, which is to have Alberta join us as the 51st state or maybe the whole country. And so this was the grand opportunity, and you blew it. So we're not going to support you. Hey, Conservatives, Poilievre's done. And if you still want our support, you're going to have to stop your whining, get rid of that loser, Poilievre, because he's just not cool enough. You got rid of his glasses. You dressed him up. You made him look a little hipper, a little younger, a little more, potent. But he just didn't resonate with the voters enough. You screwed up. You lost, loser. And Donald Trump likes winners, not losers. So, going to have to make a change. He even lost his own seat. You lost in a big way. So, Pierre Poilievre, maybe start looking for a new job, because I think that's the message that is coming from the U.S. side of the border. And while he's saying don't blame Trump because you just have to act like your own country, the truth of the matter is, and this is why I don't really agree with what he's saying, is it's not proper for the President of the United States to interfere in our election. Trump can say what he wants, but he probably shouldn't. Well, no, he just shouldn't. He shouldn't be saying things like, I would rather work with a liberal. He shouldn't be meddling. He should stay out of our politics, as we should stay out of theirs, and let people make the decision on their own. But more than that, it's obvious, clear, and I've laid out on previous nights that there has been U.S. influence in our election. I've shown you the absolute, undeniable evidence in these reports that I've been doing. So they've been meddling. And now they're really, really, really disappointed. And as much as Trump is saying that he's going to be able to work with Carney, which I think is true, he's still not telling you the truth, because he'd rather have Poilievre, because Trump's not a liberal. In fact, he's at war with liberalism. He's part of the global war on liberalism. That's what MAGA is. He doesn't like Carney at all. Now, that being said, I don't think he really minds Carney being in power, because while he's working with him, I think what you're going to see is that over the course of the next little while, you're going to see that, it's already happening. Alberta ramping up the referendum machine because a Liberal government was elected. So Trump plays both sides of the coin, you see. Heads, he wins. Tails, you lose. Heads, Canada separates into itty-bitty parts. Tails, same damn thing. Doesn't matter which way you flip the coin, at least if Canadians don't really wake up and realize what's going on. So don't take what Patrick Bet-David said there at face value. He's part of the information machine. And that was a direct message up here to conservatives and the Pierre fanboys, as he calls them. Yeah, because they're tough guys down there in Magaland, you know? Yeah. They only like winners, not losers. Well, you have lost in a big way. I'll return. Don't go away.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
And don't get me wrong, I actually like Patrick Bet-David. I like a lot of what he does. I like a lot of his interviews. I find his stuff is actually generally pretty informative, and I like his interview style. So it's not about him at all. I'm just kind of giving you some analysis. And you know, the thing here is, it's like, well, if you know, when I say that there's meddling and just everything's kind of, it makes me think of yesterday and the way that, I said that I said that they blamed or masked the U.S. meddling in the Canadian election by sort of deflecting and distracting with China. And if you're not waking up to that, like that's the go-to for Trump. Whenever they do something on the MAGA U.S. MAGA government side that is unpopular or is to be questioned or maybe embarrassing, they blame it on China. It's like every time. It's the go-to thing. They did it just yesterday again when Amazon announces that they're going to put information about how much the tariffs have added to the price of something being purchased on Amazon next to the price. So you've got the price of the item, and then they're going to put how much the tariff, how much of that price is made up of the tariff cost, which the consumer, you end up paying. And then Trump tells Caroline Leavitt to tell the media when asked about it that it's a hostile act to do that. Okay? And I don't know why that's a hostile act. Why is it a hostile act to inform the public about a form of taxation when it's really a public service? And people, that's not hostile. That's just a fact. Oh, no, you shouldn't be talking about that. And then proceeded to accuse Amazon of colluding or working with a Chinese propaganda outlet or organization to like deflect and demonize Jeff Bezos and Amazon for just telling consumers how much of what they're spending is going to cover the cost of these tariffs that Trump says is going to rejuvenate the economy. And it's really not. It is a negative thing. It's not. So the question now is, will Jeff Bezos sit in the corner and shut up and suck his thumb because Trump is saying you're being hostile, Jeff? And so while he's not, he says he's a free speech president and wants to, eliminate censorship. That is in itself a form of censorship because it's meant to have a chilling effect on, well, in this case, a big corporate enterprise, and it's oligarchical. It's oligarch. Jeff Bezos. Shut up, Jeff. Stop talking about that. Will he be silenced? I don't know. That's really what's going on there, man. And here's Andrew Scheer. This is really the guy who initiated and helped organize Pierre Poilievre's rise to power in Canada. Because he was the guy who kind of got the whole ball rolling during the Freedom Convoy when Aaron O'Toole was ousted as the leader. And then it was Andrew Scheer, who was one of the key players, member of Parliament and former leader, who got everything started up and organized to get that whole leadership change rolling. Here he is talking about this whole situation.
Clearly, we need to think about a few things about how we fell short and why we fell. No one's here denying that. And my message to those 8 million plus, or around 8 million, I haven't done a recent check, but about 8 million people who voted Conservative hoping for that change. My message is we get that there is disappointment. We get that we need to figure something else out to win next time. We're not taking that for granted. No one's saying here, that we don't have some work to do to figure that out. But there's an incredible base of support that only Pierre Poilievre could have done for our party, and he's the only person that can continue that and finish the job.
Will he run in a by-election? I mean, I know the government will call the by-election, but is it someone going to step aside in like a so-called safe seat? Like has that decision been made?
Look, these are early days. It's 2 days after the election. It's something that we'll be addressing going forward. But I can tell you that Pierre is staying on. He's fighting. He's gonna work with our caucus. He's gonna work with our loyal volunteers and our activists to keep the momentum going. And I am very confident that as we get through the difficult days, the next days and weeks, as we figure some of these things out, we're going to come out the other side with a more united team, with a bigger team, with more representation from more provinces, and Pierre is the man to deliver that victory in the next election.
In the meantime, while he's not in the House, will you be leading the party in the House? Still not decided. Okay. Had to check.
So, yeah, you can see it. It's on full display there. You have to read between the lines a little bit, but he's talking about trying to get support from, other provinces, and that means, I think, like beyond Alberta. And if you want to win, you're going to have to make peace with those Ontario PCs, man. You're going to have to, and that's the way she goes. I think it did cost the Conservatives a lot of support in this election. Yeah, and you're going to have to change the tone of the campaign. As much as they were saying, using the word hope near the end, no, there was too much negative campaigning on the Conservative side, in my opinion. As somebody who's kind of been around politics a little bit, to me, it just wasn't effective messaging overall because it didn't appeal to a broad enough cross section of the political spectrum. Even you saw big crowds, passionate crowds, but in Canada, it's different. It just is different. And that the whole Trump style thing too, latching onto that works really well to a point, and then it doesn't work at all. And so it was too much. even the airplane and the hangars and the, trying to duplicate that look from the Trump rallies. Don't tell me that's what they were. That's what they were doing. That's exactly what they were doing. They were trying to make it look like, especially near the end of the campaign, that Pierre Poilievre was, it was like a Trump style. It was Trump style, American, more to the point, maybe American style. But yeah, that's been the whole thing with Trump all along, right? It's that Trump airplane and now Air Force One. And they want to pull that up, and it's just that look. And they were going for that. And I noticed even near the end, even the liberals started to do it a little bit. But yeah, in Canada doesn't fly with some people. As a result, you guys lost again. And so did the PPC. And now some people are wondering if the People's Party of Canada will even survive. Is the party done? I've been talking to quite a few people. Some people within the party, people who used to be in the party, just behind the scenes talking, and some people saying, yeah, the party's done. Maxime Bernier's thinking otherwise. Is there a future for this PPC populist party within Canada? Here's Maxime Bernier posting again today, and we've already shown you some of what he's saying here in previous posts, but he says, so in this election, the PPC lost roughly, and get this, and this is massive, 700,000 out of its 840,000 voters from 2021, 83%. Ha! They lost 83% of their votes in this election. He says, I suspect the vast majority voted for the Conservatives, having succumbed to the don't split the vote, we must beat the Libs this time hysteria. And yet that strategy failed, he says. We still have another Liberal government, and Poilievre couldn't even win his own seat. But the insane CPC trolls and the fake independent journalists, yes. He's got some pretty good points here, actually. But the insane CPC trolls and yeah, the attacks against the PPC were coming largely from the Conservative side, have been for quite a long time. And the fake independent journalists, that's been I would say, yeah, I've been pointing that out too. And influencers paid by the CPC. Thank you, Maxime Bernier, for talking about what I've been talking about. Thank you. Are still accusing the PPC of helping to elect Carney. Yeah, it's not true. They refuse to recognize that Poilievre dropped the ball, that it's not our fault if he failed to beat the party that has destroyed Canada for a decade. Yes, it's not our fault if he offered a weak platform that was indistinguishable from Carney's. It's not our fault if he fell into the trap of letting Carney turn the election into a referendum on Trump and then felt he had to campaign on the same side as Carney against Trump. It would actually be a lot better for the Conservative movement today if the PPC had maintained or even increased its support and shown everyone that there is a strong constituency for our principled conservative populist small government ideas. Short-term electoral gimmicks and empty slogans are not going to save Canada. We need to defend clear conservative ideas, make them acceptable and widely understood, and move the Overton window if we want people to vote for them. Despite this week's setback, that's what the PPC will continue to do because the fake Conservatives won't. He's got some pretty valid points in there. The problem is they lost all those votes. That's because the PPC has its own set of problems. I won't get too deep into that tonight, especially because I don't want to kick people when they're down, especially, some hardworking people with good intentions. But they've got problems too. Some problems with their platform that scare a lot of people. They've got problems with their hardline approach to politics too, because it scares too many people. So they have trouble expanding that tent in Canada. Now that might work in some other countries where, even historically, you've got periods of time when people have migrated over to other political ideologies and ways of thinking and parties, but not so in Canada, not through our history anyway. and not with the demographics that we have in the country. So you can take a hardline approach if you want, but you're going to end up with what you got here, especially when people are looking for a way to battle the Liberals. You know, they're going to look what just happened. They came in and they, if you want to talk about cannibalization, you didn't want to, but I'm going to. They cannibalized the conservatives cannibalized the conservative vote from the PPC, and they scared people and said, if you don't vote for us and you vote for the PPC, you're splitting the vote and the Liberals will get back in. Kind of some truth to that, but obviously you're seeing they lost 83% of the vote and it still wasn't enough. Liberals still got back in. Because why? Because even with that PPC support, you still need to pull from the left. And the PPC represents left and right. Sort of the extremes on both sides, I would say. Even anarchists. You've got everything from anarchists to conservatives, communists. Oh, yeah, and every other shade of every other thing in there because they're a populist party. And that's what the conservatives were trying to do. They were trying to sort of play that role of being the populist maple MAGA thingy, be the PPC without really being the PPC, which scared people more on the progressive side of the conservatives. And I'm telling you right now, as much as they got all that PPC support, they lost some of their conservative support, their true conservative support, because they scared some of those people away. And that's why they lost. They didn't read the room quite right. And at the very end, it just didn't play out for them. I was seeing it too. And the way Maxime Bernier is right. These fake conservative live streamers paid by the CPC. Thank you, Maxime Bernier. Thank you. If you can't see it, you're blind if you're watching it, or you're just willfully blind. Oh, who was saying that recently? You can look that up. I'm not going to get into it again tonight. A lot of truth there from Maxime Bernier. And I'm seeing people within the party even posting on social media. Some people within the PPC saying the party is done. And these are fairly big names too. Most notably, I would say Mark Emery, who in my lifetime has made a lot of headlines over the years. Marijuana activist, and a really dedicated PPC supporter. He's been involved in various political movements over the years. I knew him when he lived in London, Ontario. He doesn't live there now. In fact, I used to go to his used bookstore downtown. But even he was posting just this week that, no, Max says, I love you, Max, but there's no path forward for the PPC from this point on. We shall see. As Max says otherwise. Let's take another quick break. We'll come back on the other side and continue.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
So I hope that information helped get us all a little closer to the truth tonight with regard to where we are at with Pierre Poilievre, his leadership review, which I think is now underway. And I don't know if he will survive or not. I think he still has, pretty strong support, but they're circling the wagons. And this whole 51st state stuff too, we'll dig into that in the days ahead because it's inevitable. We will need to, because the forces behind all of that, they're powerful. They're more organized than anyone realizes. They've been setting all of this up for a long time out there in Alberta. And it's all these organizations like Alberta Prosperity Project, Take Back Alberta, and others with money. There's a lot of money flowing out there around this stuff, and they have control of the conservatives, of the conservative side of things out there in Alberta, and that's flowed right into this campaign too. That is why you're seeing also this struggle, this tension, this political infighting going on within the Conservative Party federally. It's all going back to that, and it's going to continue to be the case. So let's go now to this BBC interview that Mark Carney did. Might give us a little insight into where we're going with geopolitics and how Canada fits into all of that, and the United States and Trump.
What will your message be to Donald Trump down south?
Well, it will be the same message that I've given him directly and I've been saying publicly, which is that we're two sovereign nations. There is a partnership to be had, an economic and security partnership to be had. It's going to be a very different one than we've had in the past. But also, we've got lots of other things to do. We can build out our economy here at home. We are in the process of building our relationships more deeply in Europe, elsewhere around the world. So we'll have a partnership on our terms. There's a win-win possibility there, but on our terms, not on their terms.
Will you visit him quickly, do you think?
It depends. I've been to Washington. I've been to the White House. I've seen it. I've seen all the monuments. I've been to Florida even. So I'm not going as a tourist. I'll go when there's a serious discussion to be had.
When there's respect for Canada's sovereignty?
Yeah, yes. And look, the president, I would distinguish between what the president wants and what the president expects. Yes, he has this view of his territorial views. That's never, ever going to happen with respect to Canada. Frankly, I don't think it's ever going to happen with respect to any other of whether it's Panama or Greenland or elsewhere. So the question is, when are we ready to have that discussion? Remembering that we are the biggest client for more than 40 states. Remember that we supply them with vital energy, both conventional energy, and it potentially could supply them with critical minerals. Remember that we supply their farmers with basically all their fertilizer, 70% of their fertilizer and beyond. We deserve respect. We expect respect, and I'm sure we'll get it in due course again, and then we can have these discussions.
This trade war is not just about North America; it's kind of global now. Yeah. You mentioned a moment ago that you were wanting to do more deals with reliable trade partners. You said Europe. What about the UK?
What about the UK? Yes,
what about the UK? I mean, there was something.
Gave you a
on
shout out the other day in Saskatoon.
There was something on the table. There was an issue around cheese. Do you think you can do a Canada-UK free trade agreement? Surely, it's low-hanging fruit.
One would think. Look, I mean, it's one of these situations where I forget the exact figure, but it's 97% of our trade is effectively tariff-free between Canada and the United Kingdom. Although that's slightly more narrow way of looking at it, because we could expand the level of integration between our countries, like-minded countries. You think about defense partnerships, and those conversations have just begun. So there's a lot that we can do, and of course, it's in our interest to diversify. We're definitely going to do that. We have many options. The UK is one. I would suggest it's also in the UK's interest to diversify. It's that process of
post-Brexit diversification hasn't maybe moved as fast as some had expected.
There's a G7 summit due in just a few
Yes.
weeks' time. That
Yes.
sorts of coincides with the 90-day deadline on the reciprocal tariffs. It makes
does.
it perhaps the most important G7 summit.
I think
has
it's
it?
sorry, Faisal. I think it is a very important summit because you have what you just mentioned. You have the NATO summit, which comes within a week, 10 days afterwards. But you also have, the kaleidoscope, if you will, has been shaken in terms of the international trade arrangements. Countries are getting used to the uncertainty, and the question is, well, what are we going to put back together? What is going to settle? Particularly amongst like-minded countries. The G7 are supposed to be the most like-minded of like-minded countries. We're going to put that to the test and look to move forward. Plus, if I may add, President Zelensky will be there for part of it, and again, a situation that is coming to a head.
Here in Canada, of course.
Here in Canada, here in Alberta, Kananaskis, you're welcome to come back. It's beautiful. That time here is fantastic. It is actually fantastic.
And then
you flew over it.
Just one last question. Central bankers.
Yes.
There's jobs, there's careers after leading central banks.
There's careers after journalism. It's amazing. It's remarkable.
But yeah, central banker, prime minister, which is better?
There's a time and place for everything. And I was privileged to be governor of the Bank of England, governor of the Bank of Canada at a crucial time in both respects. And of course, I'm looking for the honor of being Prime Minister of Canada at a critical time for our country.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Let's give the guy a chance. Just because there's so much at stake, man. I hope that Trump and Carney and the governments, I hope they come together so that the people, that everybody prospers. That's what I hope for. I want everybody to be successful. I don't want to tear it down. Everybody's jockeying for position in Canada, though, politically. And here you see Elizabeth May is open to running for House Speaker or maybe joining the Carney cabinet. She was reelected leader of the Green Party, sitting in the House. And yeah, everything is so tight, because they have this minority government. So then, of course, in order to get things passed and in order for the government to survive confidence votes and stand up to opposition, they need the cooperation, the support of these smaller parties. And so here it is, Elizabeth May, as you can see right there. They're wooing her. So we'll see where all that goes, too. One person in the House of Commons from a small party, and people say, well, it doesn't make any difference. You shouldn't be voting for the smaller parties because they don't have any power. No, look at the amount of sway she has today. She obviously will not align herself with the Conservatives. And she's going to end up supporting, mostly these liberal initiatives that come forward from Mark Carney's, government anyway. But will she actually just go right over there and join the cabinet? Well, that would be something to see. So the NDP and that single Green MP, they hold the balance of power, really. And the Bloc will maybe go over and support the Conservatives, but they have said, Yves-François Blanchet has been saying that there will be no oil or gas development in our province, no pipelines through here. This is a big problem. So you need a strong federal government to stand up to that. And in order to get the support of the Bloc, the Conservatives would have to compromise on that probably, which is what they need to not do, because you need to get the pipelines through, which means you need to support Alberta. If you want Alberta to stay, what are you going to do? So we'll see how the Liberals respond to all of that. And Bill C-69 and, the No New Pipelines Act, as they call it, but Carney has said it doesn't mean necessarily that you can't get the pipelines through because that's not really how the legislation is written. Well, we'll see. He will need to make peace with Alberta. This Liberal Prime Minister will need to make peace somehow with this conservative, United Conservative Party premier out in Alberta who is, I'll just come right out and say it, basically controlled by the separatist movement out there. They just don't come out and say the quiet part out loud, but they've got her right where they want her. And if she doesn't do what they want her to do, they will use the people that they've put into position on committees and in various political positions throughout the province to unseat her. She'll be gonzo. They've made a deal with her to get her into that position. They're not even being quiet about it, frankly, now. And that is why she is taking the steps that she's taken. That's why the day after the election, she comes out and makes those changes to the rules that pave the way for a citizen-led initiative. A lot of sovereign citizens out there. Citizens-led initiative to get a referendum underway. It's coming. And this does represent an existential threat to Canada as we know it. Truth. Well, what else can I tell you? Well, let's since it's all Canada tonight, pretty much. A little bit of stuff from other countries. I'm going to talk just a little bit about Vietnam in a moment. But let me show you this stuff about these allegations of voter meddling or, improprieties or just problems at polling stations and so on. Yeah, tonight, couple of things, all right? If there were really problems with the way the election was handled at polling stations and so on, if you know of anything, you should file a complaint with Elections Canada. And if it warrants an investigation, I'm sure one will occur. And that is what is happening up here in Quebec's Nunavut region, where we are seeing, look at the headline here, polling station problems prompt calls for investigation. So this is very legitimate and absolutely does need to be addressed. So we're seeing here in the CTV article, polling hours for voters to cast ballots in Quebec's Nunavut region during Monday's federal election were inconsistent across many communities and in some cases not open at all. So this report from CTV, they sent a reporter out and they did speak to someone from the community who tried to vote, just an example of one of many people from the community who wanted to vote but was not able to because when he went to the polling station in northern Quebec, in Ivujivik, he found that it was closed. In fact, nobody in the community could vote there because in that riding because it was closed. So they filed a complaint with Elections Canada. And Elections Canada has indicated that they are taking action on this. Elections Canada Chief Electoral Officer Stéphane Perreault says, quote, deeply regrets that some electors in Nunavut were not able to cast their vote. He says Elections Canada will review the circumstances that led to this situation as well as the measures taken during this election to improve voting services to Indigenous electors. And they will publish the findings. So more to come on that. And they do need to address it. And then we will need to see how much of an impact they may have had on the election overall. So that is absolutely something that needs attention. Now, I am also seeing out there, I've seen a few posts like this. These, I would say, need real scrutiny, and I'm not sure they're really legitimate. Or when I say not legitimate, I would say that maybe these are being shot and posted, these videos, from misguided people who are misinterpreting what they are seeing and then posting these things, raising questions about the legitimacy of the election and whether things were rigged. I don't know what the exact circumstances are surrounding this, but because, as I've indicated, 1 year I did work for Elections Canada, as many people do, as a temporary worker working at a polling station. I was a polling supervisor. All the people that work in these polling stations, they're just your friends and your neighbors and your relatives. And, a lot of people apply for these jobs. They're temporary positions. These polling stations are staffed entirely by volunteers, people who just apply for the jobs from the community. And some of the more important positions, they are vetted. So people are checked out for security reasons, and then different people are placed in different positions with different responsibilities. And in this case, here's this video. Now let me just find out who it was again. Mr. Bench posting this. I don't know if he's the original. I don't think he's the original source for this. I think somebody named Carl Harrison posted this. Again, I'm not sure because I just don't know if it was scalped from somebody else's source. I just don't know. But I am seeing the video, and it is getting a lot of views. But you should be very careful about the way you view these things, because I'm telling you right now, from what I'm seeing here, I'm not as worried about it as the vast majority of people would be, because I know how these things kind of work. I'll run the video and then I'll explain.
I can't believe you're doing that.
What do you mean? I don't understand.
We're working for government.
I want to understand why these are just sitting on the street, how you took them into a taxi and you guys could just fill out anything you want and put them in the box. Is this a normal election? This is how elections are run? This is a complete fraud.
Why don't you go and speak to the people inside? They'll be happy to take care of you. We are working here. You're not allowed to.
I'm on public property. I can film whatever I want. And you guys are walking around with ballot boxes in a taxi? Wow.
I can't believe you're doing that.
What do you mean?
Okay. First of all, he's not on public property. He's on private property because he's in what appears to be a shopping plaza. So in the parking lot, in the building, you're on private property. Now, in the way Canadian law is written, he can shoot as much as he wants to until he's asked to leave. So that's fine. She is not the leaseholder or the property owner. And so she doesn't really necessarily have the authority to ask him to leave, although she is working in the building for Elections Canada, and so may have some authority in that regard. She's asking him, or may have already asked him, to stop shooting her. I don't know. Didn't exactly get to that point in this video, but there are some legal questions surrounding that. That's sort of a sidebar. The point is here that he is focused on them carrying these bags full of what he is assuming are ballots. I don't know if those are exact ballots or why they would be carrying these things in to that building. I don't know where the building is, but I can tell you it is not unusual at all. In fact, it's common to see election poll workers carrying bags like that out of these polling stations, excuse me, or into offices, headquarters, regional or municipal headquarters that are set up temporarily in buildings just like this by Elections Canada, sort of like central hubs where the ballots are brought in by the poll workers in cars to these head offices, polling stations. So the way it works, and they can't just fill out whatever they want and put them into these bags or the ballot boxes, because the way it works is at the polling stations, after the ballots are cast, they are placed in these ballot boxes, which are originally sealed over at headquarters, okay? And then they go out to the polling. They're taken by the poll workers, usually the poll supervisors. Sometimes that stuff, like I took this stuff home before the ballots were cast. So I had all this Elections Canada stuff. I brought it here. and then empty, took all the unmarked ballots, all the stuff, if I recall correctly, had to take all that stuff. Or maybe I picked it. I can't remember if I brought it here or not. But anyway, I picked the stuff up. I had to take it to the polling station. So you could, in certain instances, take this stuff home in certain circumstances, especially during advanced polls. That does happen. But all the stuff is sealed so that you can't tamper with it. And if it is tampered with, it's pretty secure stuff. And if the seals don't match, then you could go to jail for a long time. It's a serious offense. So yeah, it's not unusual at all. In fact, it's required. It has to happen because we don't have Dominion voting machines, which a lot of people still believe we do, but we don't. So you have the paper ballots that you've been asking for, but how do you think the paper ballots get from the polling stations back to the Elections Canada offices, in your community, like the head office? And then how do you think they get from there back to Elections Canada itself? Well, they're transported by the poll workers, or like who are tasked with the responsibility of doing that. I had to take all the ballots finally back to HQ in my car. How else are they going to get there? So what do you think these people are doing? They're doing their job. And if there are ballots in those bags, they're sealed. And if they break the seal, they're in deep trouble. Now, I can also tell you that there's layers of security that are applied to this as well. After the ballots are cast and they go into those sealed boxes at the polling stations at the end of the night, as I recall, and this was years ago, so my old brain has to kick into memory mode here. The doors are locked at the end of the night when the polls close. Bam! Nobody gets in or out of that room. And all the ballots are counted by hand, by multiple people, under scrutiny. And all the results are recorded on sheets. And then, after everything is counted, checked by multiple people, verified, and then double-checked by the polling supervisor, and everything is in order, it's all placed into bags under supervision and sealed again, and signatures applied over those seals, as I recall. If I'm getting some of the little details maybe a little mixed up, it's because it was years ago. Procedures, I'm sure, are very much the same today. And this was back, 2 elections ago when I worked a polling station. And then then the results are phoned in to headquarters as in real time, so that those election results from the polling station phoned into HQ, and then HQ conveys that information to Elections Canada main head office, where all that information is then provided to media outlets, posted online. That's where your election results come from, on the screen on your television and computer screens. And that's what's reported by all media, social media, independent media, mainstream media. That's where all the numbers come from. And so by phoning those results in, multiple people watching it, there's a layer of verification. So immediately, right there, before those ballots go anywhere, HQ has a total. They know what those numbers are before those ballots ever leave. Then they're placed into these secure containers, and then from there, they're taken over to the HQ, over to the headquarters. Once there, those can be the vote count can be done again and verified again to match against what was phoned in. So there's another layer of security there. So there's multiple people involved, all of it, checked along the way. Everything is sealed and secured, so you can't be messing with stuff. And if things don't match up, now you've got a problem. So with these people carrying these bags, there are multiple layers of security on both sides, plus what they're doing there. And this guy's just shooting a video, and he doesn't really know what's going on, or maybe he does. It doesn't. And maybe he's got another motive. But he's just shooting people carrying bags and saying, "What are you doing? That doesn't seem normal to me." He posts that online. People who don't have any idea how anything works it just gets people upset. And then all these people who say, see, the whole thing is rigged, don't know what they're talking about. It's not fair. It's not right. And I'll tell you this, those poor ladies, who the heck are they? That's your next door neighbor. Okay? That's some lady who applied for a job with Elections Canada for a temporary position, went through, a week of training or so, or maybe a couple of weeks of training. I can't remember. It took about a week. I was 5-6 days, I think, of straight up training. And I'm sure many people out there listening to me tonight have gone through this as well. Because a bunch of you, I think, probably even worked this past election, so you know what I'm talking about. And if I'm getting any of the details wrong, you can maybe fill people in on the chat. I haven't even been looking at the chat, but you know. So, but hey, conspiracy theories are fun. So believe what you want to believe, but I'm not putting much stock in that video. I am obviously concerned when I see that polling stations were not open. I believe that. That's verifiable, and those need to be looked into. And that's not to say there couldn't be anomalies or problems or even attempts to do something. But here's the thing. If you're going to shoot a video like that and you've got real questions, why just post it online? If it's a real legitimate concern and you've got a valid complaint, why don't you do exactly what the lady had said? Why don't you first go into the building, talk to the people, the poll supervisor, and ask a question and find out what the heck is going on? And if those people are doing something wrong, why not deal with it right then and there? And get the poll supervisor, or if that was the headquarters, you'd have the electoral returning officer, the district returning officer right there to speak to, who could then hold those people accountable and even, deal with it in a more robust criminal or investigative manner. And if you're still not satisfied, you can file a formal complaint with Elections Canada directly and then get real action, just like the people in that northern Quebec community have done tonight. Then you're going to get real positive results, right? But no, it might be just more fun to shoot a video, make an allegation, make it look like something through your comments, like something nefarious is going on or improper, and then spin that up as sort of like, they're rigging the election, scaring people, undermining confidence in the whole system. Not in that case, folks, and I've seen a few videos like that. So, question everything you're seeing out there. And again, if I'm getting any of those details wrong, it's because it's been a few years since I've really dealt with it. And, but I remember, and I'm sure you guys who have recently, some of you probably have even worked this last election. So, yeah. Now, what else is going on out there in the world? Well, we know that the United States and Ukraine have announced an economic deal. This after a weeks-long press by President Trump has been calling on Ukraine to compensate Washington for more billions in military economic assistance. And so we've seen now tonight Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent posting on social media that this, quote, partnership allows the United States to invest alongside Ukraine to unlock Ukraine's growth assets, mobilize American talent, capital, and governance standards that will improve Ukraine's investment climate and accelerate Ukraine's economic recovery. So what does this mean? I'm not really sure, but there has been this deal signed in Washington. So will it lead to peace? That's the larger question. That remains to be seen. We're going to have to see how the details shake down on this. With Russia just announcing that they want that ceasefire to coincide with their big parade coming up here in May. And Ukraine saying, well, what are you waiting for? Why do you have to wait for the day of the big parade? Let's have the ceasefire right now. But no, it has been, it's a PR game. That's what's going on there. It seems pretty disingenuous, frankly. But I think he does want the ceasefire to coincide with the big event. so that it goes off without maybe any drone attacks inside Russia. So that the optics are all good on it. And because he's throwing that out there, if Ukraine were to attack that parade, the optics would look just terrible, wouldn't it? So I don't think you'll see any attacks on the parade, which is to celebrate the end of the Second World War. And you're seeing world leaders from, the West and the East, different countries, going to take part in that event. Because, of course, the Allies were aligned a little bit different back then. The United States and Russia were allies in World War II, as many of you still may know or remember from your history. And today marks the 50th anniversary for the end of the Vietnam War. And boy, I'll tell you, that's something that has really left a big mark on Western society, the United States, Canada. And I would say in that respect to Canada, because of the Vietnam War, that was one of those moments when Canada differentiated itself from the United States. Well, the U.S. was bogged down in Vietnam and people were being drafted. Some of those people who received the draft notices fled to Canada, draft dodgers, and they were hiding up here in Kazakhstan, a country that apparently just has an imaginary border, an artificial country, says Yves-François Blanchette. Maybe not so much back in the 70s when I was a kid and Americans were running away so they wouldn't have to take part in that war, that controversial war that even as a very young kid I still remember well because of the movies and the media and the impact it had on society and the fighting and the controversy and all the go back to where you came from, you pinko commie comments and all that kind of crap, which still out there today. So here today we have video of this big ceremony, this big event in Vietnam, mounting its biggest ever celebration of the fall of Saigon, this being the 50th anniversary, with this grand parade. And for the first time, Chinese troops took part in the event. Xi Jinping visiting there. I'm sure that that won't sit well with Donald Trump because he doesn't like the Chinese at all. And here's a little video from the big parade. And, looking back and remembering the history, because I'm old, what Vietnam in part showed the world was that a much smaller power, North Vietnam, can really resist a much greater power, the United States, the West. And what a brutal, bloody, senseless war Vietnam was, because the policies really were focused on body count. If you go back and look at the history, a lot of it didn't make sense. And the Americans would engage in these battles where they would, take a hill. A lot of people would be killed, casualties. And they'd send the numbers back to Washington, and they would gauge success on the number of people killed. And then they would just leave, and then within days, the hill would revert back to control from the other side because it wasn't so much about claiming territory. It was just the policies, the strategies just looking back and all the history, that it was all so senseless in the end. That was a war that really just didn't seem to make sense. But at the same time, you understand some of these things even when they don't make sense. Does that make any sense? Let's just pray for peace. We'll come back tomorrow with more stuff, more information that hopefully will get us all a little closer to the truth. Love you guys. See you tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
I heard old Cosmo howling last night up on the hill where the moon shines so bright. He was singing a tune, lonesome dogs cry about freedom, running and touching the sky. If I leave here tomorrow, won't you still remember me? Cosmo's free, running wild, wild as the wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. Cosmo's got them paws that just itch to roam. He's chasing his dreams, he's far from home. With a heart full of love and a spirit so free, he's living his life wild and carefree. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmo's free, running wild, wild as the wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard of a blur. Cosmo's on a journey, he's got no chains, he's running through fields, breaking all the lanes. Now the night's getting cold, the sky's turning gray, but Cosmo's still out there, he's miles away. He's not looking back, he's got his path to tread. With every step, he's leaving his bed. If I leave here tomorrow, won't you still remember me? Cosmo's free, running wild, wild as the wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. So if you're feeling lost, just think of Cosmo's run. Remember his spirit, his freedom, his fun. And maybe one day, when you're feeling alone, you'll find your own freedom and let your spirit go. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmo's free, running wild, wild as the wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard of a bird. A heart full of love and a spirit so free. He's living his life wild and carefree. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard of a bird. Cosmo's on a journey, he's got no chains. He's running through fields, breaking all the lanes.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.